knowing that he won't blame her for what she's feeling, and that his rational mind will bring order and repose. So that's what the rational mind is supposed to do, bring order and repose. But not to blame her for feeling what she's feeling. Oh, you're such an emotional wreck. Don't be stupid. That's not what she needs to hear.
So independence is not the way to make her happy.
It's not the natural way of life for her.
Oh.
She also wants him to be stronger than she is.
Yes.
That kind of flies in the face of our culture, right? Like the feminization of men. No, women want strong men.
That's right.
And you're made strong from the inside. The man's task is to discover the truth in the emotional feeling when she needs his rational guidance and to separate them from excesses. To provide guidance for her. She also wants support in her home life. So, guys need to butt out. Right? The kitchen's her domain. Let her do it. Yes.
I love that one, bud. Repeat that again.
What I did not mean by that.
Go on, Willie.
Let's stay focused. Let's stay focused. She's not. I didn't mean she was a prisoner to the kitchen. I'm just saying. If she's in charge of the home, where are you in charge of the home? A woman wants support in her personal and interior life, so she needs to be able to confidently share her fears and doubts with total trust. And this trust needs to be one on the emotional level. She needs to be free to reveal and open herself. And when she senses this freedom, the trust between her and her husband will grow more easily. Okay, what does a man expect? He expects love. He expects emotional love and emotional devotion through her. A man shows his love for a woman by satisfying her feelings and emotions. And a woman does that for a man, but she also cares for him. Part of the reason for that is because besides his family, in a certain sense, a man lives for his work, right? John Paul II taught us that to work, he sort of gave a new spin on work. Like work is co-creating with God. So there's something just intrinsically good about man's work as such. So it has an independent character beyond merely taking care of his family. Again, it's not just utilitarian. And so he needs her support in other areas of the family life, so that he can be focused on taking care of the family and living out his life of work. Doesn't mean he's not involved in the home life. And he needs her support for his interior life and needs. You know, sometimes too, like, it's very difficult, this much I do know, even though everyone's been married for a while. But when we come home from like doing something, we need wind down time. And we often need wind down time before communion time. Like as men I'm talking about. I mean women may need this too as well, but especially for men. And I mean, there's just certain, again, we're speaking on the idea, there's certain exceptions, you know. She's been dying all day to see him because of some emergency she has to share with him, but a lot of times when men come home, they just need a little bit of space. You know, she needs to let him like wind down, kick his feet up, read the paper, whatever. So that later on he'll be ready for that communion time. He also needs emotional expressions of love. He needs signs of tenderness from her and longs for the warmth of her love. He wants to feel her surrender. And these signs of tenderness need to be there. Otherwise, one of the things he'll do is he'll make sex a substitute for that. for what is missing on a higher human level. So any repressed emotions will seek an escape in the sexual sphere. He needs her to be attuned to his emotional life. She needs to share his desires, his joys, his worries, his feelings. What affects him also affects her. Men are incredibly strengthened by this. Like when we know a woman's behind us, it's like, you know, we can do it. We can do it. You know, you look at the garden, right? Like Adam screwed up because he didn't say anything. But Eve screwed up because she didn't draw the man out. Does that make sense? So there needs to be that mutual support. He especially needs her to support in the real trials and difficulties of life. He doesn't need to be blamed for his problems. Her love and strength help him to bear common trials. He'll feel braver and stronger in the knowledge that he isn't alone. And let me say this, women have a really unique capacity to suffer. I mean, obviously we see that eminently in the Blessed Mother at the foot of the cross. But that's just part of who a woman is, and it's awesome. They have such a unique capacity to stand alongside someone who is walking that way of the cross. And if that is present in a marriage, that marriage is going to thrive. Man's got to do it for a woman to speak. Again, speaking in general level. You women have such, your hearts are so beautiful, and they're so open, they're so huge. You have a unique capacity to suffer, and men need that co-suffering. She also supports him by accepting his emotional response. So when we get home, we need time to wind down, and we also sometimes just need to get it out. How you doing? Terrible. Really angry. And it may even, we may be taking it out on you. I'm not saying that's a good thing. All I'm saying is that we just haven't needed time just to let it roll. And so it's just good for women to know that. There is a time and a place to say, you can't treat me that way. But at the same time, a wife's patience and calmness and kindness can go a long way. And just knowing that about her husband. You know, you get to know someone, like you read their body language. Like you know how he's doing before you even ask. Like he comes in the door and the door slams, you're like, okay, it was a tough day at work. And you know, even though, women are going to love this, even though that they lean on us for our rationality, we can be quite unreasonable at times. Until we get it out. Okay, let's talk about the causes of unhappiness. Husband's failings. We'll start with husband. Keeping his feelings hidden from others, especially his wife. I don't need to explain that. We've been talking about this all weekend. You know, the need for emotional unity in the marriage, which requires emotional vulnerability. That's uncomfortable. And if that's uncomfortable to the point that we can't go there yet, then we're not ready for marriage. Number two, work takes up too much of his time. So again, there's an intrinsic value to man's work. And to woman's work if she's working. Again, we're talking on general levels. So I'm working to support my family, but I need to work as man. However, I can go too far in this direction. It can become excessive. I can bring that business-like attitude home, right? Even to my emotional life. Man needs to be matter of fact to make it in the world. It's a tough world out there. He can't be ruled by emotion. But he needs to be aware of looking for the most convenient, efficient, or utilitarian ways of doing things at home. She ain't going like that. And she doesn't deserve that. And women are infallible when sensing this. You know, when he brings the work attitude home, I mean, I think we've learned this weekend that all of us are equipped with intuition, but that women's intuition, that sixth sense they have, it just kicks in. How about number 3, an excessive emphasis on duty? So duty is what makes us do something to achieve an end, even a high end sometimes. But emotion, living on the emotional level, it seeks its own immediate good. So it may be subordinate to a higher end. But I'm here right now, present right now, rejoicing in you and you in me. So we need duty in our lives, but not to the point that it trumps emotion. And when that happens, dissatisfaction arises. Thinking too much about sin. When one puts too great a stress on moral duties and sees marital love completely in that light, normal emotional response can be killed. A lack of tangible expressions of love. Again, she knows I love her. Why do I have to keep repeating it? Why do I have to offer these tangible expressions? And sometimes there's lies built in there, These types of emotional expressions are girly. And that's just a lie. Psychologists will even say, too, that the most important love relationship in a marriage is between the husband and wife. And when kids see that, that's where a lot of their security comes from. Wow, like mom and dad love each other. They really enjoy being with one another. There's like solidity there. They're going to stay together. I'm safe. Everything's right with the world. I'm secure. I don't have to worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be all right as long as they're right? And here's another pitfall of it. Pleasing his wife at all costs. Being a people pleaser. This would go both ways. That's not going to make a healthy marriage. When the woman wants to please the husband at all costs, or vice versa. But especially in the man's life, because he's protector, provider, and leader. Sometimes that means you need to make tough decisions, ideally with your wife, but sometimes not. And hopefully that means you're taking your responsibility seriously. Okay, how about a wife's possible failings? So excessive psychological or emotional reserve. That's not good for anyone, but especially for women. Since you're just so naturally emotionally expressive, which is such an awesome gift. Like your hearts are on display in a successful marriage. And often, again, this is connected to fear and anxiety. And some of these are just kind of the flip of the man. So when the man, brings his business-like attitude at home, but how about the woman? If she's too matter-of-fact, and again, especially because she's a woman. And a man relies upon the beauty of her heart and the emotional capacity that she has. So even more than a man, a woman should not have her emotional life repressed by business-like attitudes. Again, man can become too involved in work, so can a woman. And even more so than a man, like work that's unnecessary for the family's well-being. It's not condemning women who work. It's not saying you can't or shouldn't. But what's implied in here is a balance and a recognition that we're in a relationship. And is whatever I'm doing outside the family allowing me to be who I'm supposed to be in the family? Even like work in the home can become too much like that. So, overcoming some of these faults, this is what we're about. First of all, admitting that there's something lacking and finding out what it is. And again, repressing feelings and the notion that there's something wrong is not good. And blaming all the others is not good. And it's also wrong to just give in to that belief, that cynical belief, well, there's things wrong with every marriage and we just need to get into it. There are things wrong with every marriage. And endurance is a proof of love. But it's not meant to take the place of improving what can be improved. And the Lord desires more for us, always. And speaking freely and sincerely with each other about their problems. They are one, and this oneness really forbids them to keep secrets. So frank talk is a proof of trust. And again, I would say this is kind of a litmus test too. If you're in a relationship and you're not at this point, you're not ready, and that's okay. But you're not ready to take that next step towards marriage. Well, the next step towards marriage is moving in that direction. Let's put the positive spin on it. Speaking openly and honestly. Again, we enter into this relationship because we want them to love the real me. And the real me is not always going to agree with the real me. And that's okay. We're going to complement one another. That's a good thing. I mean, thank God. The real you doesn't always agree with the real me, because the real me has crazy ideas sometimes. Right? You know? I mean, you know, and again, like, we're speaking in generalities, like, the woman leans on us for our rationality, but sometimes we need to lean on her for her rationality, you know? Like, we throw out an idea, she's like, well, have you thought about this? I don't know, I hadn't thought about it. Frank talk. You can also seek advice from someone they trust. But again, be sure that the third party understands emotional problems and emotional requirements of marriage. Make sure they're in a healthy marriage. If they're married. Marriage partners who have problems are just really encouraged by Dr. Truth just to maintain patience and confidence. You know, the old saying goes, Rome wasn't built in a day. Once you say yes, you know, once you make that covenant, and by the way, you all know this, but it's the couple that marries themselves. That's where the sacrament is exchanged, in the yes of the couple. Once that happens, you are saying yes to a lifelong journey. And journeys are long, right? You know, we get thirsty, we get hungry, we get tired, we fall down, stub our toe, we get back up, stop, take a nap, get going. It's part of the journey. Growth is gradual. And sometimes its slowness guarantees that future stability. And finally, one needs confidence. Confidence in God, who wants happiness for His people. And to the extent that we depend on God for happiness, we trust Him, surrender to Him, open ourselves up to Him, we'll find it. And those who live in sacramental marriages, or those of us seeking that, have a further reason for confidence. And that's that Jesus gives you the grace to make marriage into a beautiful union. A union like the one we read about between Christ and His church. A union of our whole being. That's good news, amen?
Amen.
Okay, thank you.